this holiday season, as you invite other people into your home and keep your home warm, your vehicle warmed up and ready for the day, and de-icing your driveway, all the things you do during the winter season, especially during the holiday season, as people are visiting your home or you're visiting someone else's home, that presents a number of different hazards that can be a danger to yourself, to your kids, to your pets, and more. Here to talk about some of those issues and ways you can avoid them as well as mitigate them is Dr. Varun Vohra from the Michigan Poison and Drug Information Center. Dr. Vohra, thanks for being with us again.
Hey, Tyler. Thanks for having me.
Good to have you with us. So, and there's obviously throughout the year, there are some consistent hazards that people find in their homes, whether it be certain chemicals or cleaners laying around that could be hazardous to anybody if ingested, or even if they make contact with your skin, among other issues. But what are some of the more common hazards that tend to pop up around the holiday season that people should be keeping an eye out for and keeping aware of in their homes?
Sure. Yeah. So I think, there's kind of two sections, right? Sort of outdoor and indoor hazards common around this time of year. So as far as indoor goes, there's going to be a lot of family time, a lot of friends, a lot of get-togethers. So I think food handling is going to be a big one, sort of a low-hanging fruit there. So people want to make sure that they're separating their cooked and their raw foods, their meats, their poultries, separate from things like fruits and vegetables. When it comes to cooking meat, things like keeping an internal a thermometer, a meat thermometer, will be really, really helpful. And then keeping your perishable foods within the refrigerator, usually at around 40 Fahrenheit, and making sure that you're refrigerating foods that are perishable that have been served within a couple of hours. And all this kind of information with regards to minimum temperatures with food handling and cooking and preparation, you can find on our website at mipoisonhelp.org. Further, plants are a big thing, decorative plants within this time of year in the home. So things like holly, poinsettias, pine, mistletoe as well. So you want to keep these out of the reach of children at least, and make sure that you're monitoring them when they're around these kinds of things, because handling them, swallowing them, etc., can cause severe reactions, potentially skin reactions, allergic reactions. They can be very irritating to the mouth area and the stomach. And can cause some pretty significant injuries. So we want to keep kids and pets away from those, especially. When handling live pine as well, want to make sure that you're covering your skin. And as well, cleaning up pine needles that may have fallen, so because kids and pets can get into them. Toys is a big thing as well, with all the gifts that kids are going to be receiving. Bubble lights, things like that. You want to make sure that they are, obviously you're keeping kids away from them in terms of potentially ingesting them. They contain a very hazardous material. It's called methylene chloride. It's a hydrocarbon. If swallowed, it can actually turn into carbon monoxide. So it can cause a whole host of badness. Other toys, lights, bells, toys, etc., they can be choking hazards as well. So just making sure that you're watching your kids during that time, making sure that they're using them appropriately for the right reasons, especially with batteries too. So a lot of these electronics that we're getting with toys, especially button batteries, alkaline batteries, are going to be hazardous. Button batteries are really tiny. They almost look like coins. If swallowed, it can be really hazardous, especially for children, because it doesn't take a lot to close that electric circuit. It can cause actually heat injuries or thermal injuries, because it can generate heat, which can be really, really damaging to the airway and the esophagus. Alkaline batteries, you can find them in toys and electronics as well, making sure that they aren't leaking or damaged, because they do contain corrosive liquids. Beyond that, sort of outside the home, things in the garage are going to be really, really salient, like you mentioned with the de-icing or ice melt products. So rock salt is a big one. So those things that kind of lower the freezing point of water, they kind of turn ice into slush, right? And they increase the traction so it's not as slippery. The problem with those is that they contain a lot of sodium chloride usually, or other types of chlorides, which can be really, really hazardous if ingested. It can cause a whole host of electrolyte imbalances, which can be really, really dangerous. So you want to keep kids and pets away from that, especially. As well as in the garage, antifreeze and windshield washer fluids. We see a lot of these types of ingestions and injuries, calls to the poison center, or patients that we see in the hospital. They can be very toxic. They contain products called ethylene glycol and methanol. Very, very toxic. Can cause kidney damage. It can cause blindness as well. Making sure that they're up and away out of the reach of children. They can be colorful liquids, so you want to make sure that they're kept either in a locked cabinet or their original containers up and away. Sometimes what we see is that these products are kept in other types of containers, which people might mistake for, potable fluids, things like water bottles, etc. So please do not do that. But again, if there's any sort of question or concerns that someone or a kid may have gotten into it, call the poison center immediately. The biggest thing that we do recommend is if and when these children or anyone gets into these types of products, do not make them vomit at all. Call us first if you can. If it's an emergency where someone's lost consciousness or seizing or having trouble breathing, call 911 right away. That's going to be the biggest thing for adults and caregivers.
24/7 free expert poison help can be available in a couple different places on the website, the Michigan, on the Michigan Poison and Drug Information Center's website. That is poison.med.wayne.edu, as well as by calling them 1-800-222-1222. That's 1-800-222-1222 for more information. And going to more of those outdoor products that we use in the winter season, those de-icers and such, are there alternatives that are suggested by your organization or by other experts in this particular area that may be less of a hazard, maybe a more natural product that's less potentially dangerous, but just as effective, that people may be able to replace some of these more chemically charged products in their home with?
Yeah, so I think when it comes to the outdoor products, things like antifreeze, there's different types. There's environmentally friendly antifreeze. It usually has things like propylene glycol. They're more environmentally friendly to pets, but they still can be toxic. Unfortunately, it's kind of a trade-off, right? Because for it to be able to function like it needs to, it has to have certain chemical properties a lot of times. So with the de-icers and rock salt, a lot of times those things are the most effective at lowering that freezing point of water to kind of get rid of that ice and turn it into that slush. So it is, again, sort of a trade-off. I know that we can't avoid people getting into these types of things, but there are a few alternatives. But again, these are usually tried and true products. We just want to make sure that we're monitoring our children and our pets and making sure that they're not getting into these things inappropriately. And whenever you do use them, making sure things that are quite intuitive to individuals, making sure that kids may not be around when you're actually using them so that they don't see it, or especially keeping the products up and away out of the reach of them so they can't access it. Another thing I did want to mention, though, big time of year, especially in the winter time, is smoke and carbon monoxide. I think that's a big indoor hazard that people always need to be vigilant about, and making sure that they do have carbon monoxide detectors installed on all floors of their home, smoke alarms as well, making sure that they're getting them checked very regularly, at least once yearly, making sure that they're getting their furnace checked as well, at least once yearly, and making sure to recognize that carbon monoxide is colorless, it's odorless, so you won't be able to smell it, you won't be able to see it, but a lot of the signs and symptoms can be really, really damaging. So you're going to have headaches, you could have nausea, vomiting, you could even lose consciousness depending on the concentrations of carbon monoxide. So that's why we recommend people never running gas generators or charcoal grills or gas grills inside the home or any sort of enclosed space or 20 feet from the home. Making sure that the space is ventilated, because it can obviously lead to badness where people can potentially lose consciousness. A lot of grilling happens this time of year for a variety of reasons, for football games, etc. So making sure that they're taking the necessary precautions to ventilate that space. So that's a big hazard that we're always on the lookout for, and that we want people to know more about.
We're joined by Dr. Varun Vohra on today's edition of the Megacast. He's the academic director as well as a clinical toxicologist at the Michigan Poison and Drug Information Center with us on today's program. Again, the phone number for the Michigan Poison and Drug Information Center, should you be in need of 24/7 free expert poison help, is 1-800-222-1222, 1-800-222-1222, or local calls in Michigan only at 313-486-0078, 313-486-0078 is recommended. You dial with a 1 in front of the 313 as well. Another thing we see commonly this year too, and you mentioned it a little bit when you talked about smoke and carbon monoxide, is people want to avoid the cold and be ready to use their vehicles or other devices that are typically outdoors. Their cars, maybe a snow blower, and in many cases they want to warm these up, but there are a number of hazards that come along with those, even if your garage door is open. So what are the suggestions from the Poison and Drug Information Center in terms of what people can do to warm these different vehicles up without potentially leading to a hazard in their garage or other areas of their home?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing there, I mean, especially with cars, never run your car or to heat it up while you're waiting to get in before work or whatnot. Never run it in the enclosed garage. I think ventilation is going to be the biggest similarity between all these sort of practices, is making sure that you have a space, a big enough space for that sort of that gas to dissipate. It has somewhere to go, so it's not obviously enclosed in that space, and it's going to cause more harm. Snowblower, same thing. If you're running it, making sure that it's near the end of the garage where it can off gas into the outside. So those are the biggest things that we preach around this time of year. And I think the biggest thing is that if you do start to have any symptoms, we're hoping that you have a functional carbon monoxide detector. But if there's any doubt, remove yourself from the home, open windows, etc., and making sure to inquire with other people in the home whether they have any symptoms or they're experiencing similar effects. If you have any questions, again, please call the Poison Center. And if it's serious enough, where someone's lost consciousness or having trouble breathing, etc., call 911 immediately.
More information again can be found, as well as other helpful tips, on poison.med.wayne.edu, or if you have additional needs for 24/7 free expert poison help, 1-800-222-1222 is the phone number for more information. Joining us is Dr. Varun Vohra, the academic director, as well as a clinical toxicologist at the Michigan Poison and Drug Information Center, on today's edition of the Megacast. Dr. Vohra, a couple more minutes with you today before we'll need to move on. Anything else that people should be aware of this holiday season, this winter season, or going forward, that are becoming more common hazards in the home, or just things to look out for and be careful of?
Yeah, I think around this time of year, again, like I said, with people getting together, with parties, family get-togethers, friends, etc., there's going to be a lot of different types of foods and drinks. So when it comes to alcohol use, we want everyone to obviously be responsible with their alcohol use this time of year. So typically, we recommend, when it comes to men and women, with men, usually 2 standard alcoholic beverages a day, and with women, it's usually no more than 1. And standard alcoholic drink can be different things. So a 12-ounce beer contains about 5% alcohol. A 5-ounce glass of wine can contain more percentage of alcohol, about 12%. And then about a 1.5 ounce of a shot of liquor, so sort of hard liquor. Usually it's 80 proof, which is usually about 40% alcohol. Typically, that's what we would recommend, no more than 2 in men and no more than 1 in women. Obviously, keeping these stuff out of the reach of children is going to be the biggest thing. Children can be more sensitive. It doesn't take as much for them to ingest to cause toxicity, just because of their sheer size, especially, and it can cause a lot of electrolyte imbalances as well in children that they can be susceptible to. So we want to make sure that everyone's enjoying themselves, but enjoying themselves responsibly. So making sure that's always sort of a universal hazard that's out there with alcoholic beverages, but sometimes in some seasons more than others. So making sure that we're being vigilant and careful when we use these products, especially around children.
More information again can be found on the website, on the Poison Center's website, poison.med.wayne.edu. Dr. Vohra, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Tyler. Take care.